boy had been awake for 73 hours. His hands still twitched from the stun stick impacts. Around him, the holding crate stank of chem discharge, recycled breath, and the last meager warmth of 100 pressed bodies. When the gate opened, it didn't swing. It screamed upward, hydraulic pistons groaning with ritual reluctance. Light poured in like punishment. A vox barked, "Identification is surrender. Surrender is proof of loyalty." He stepped forward, and his name ceased to exist. What replaced it was a designation code lashed to his chest with adhesive tape. The barcode didn't match the planet he was born on. It didn't need to. The Munitorum didn't care. They weren't building stories. They were building meat. There is no volunteerism in the Astra Militarum, no act of patriotic courage, no free enlistment. A man joins because a clerk several parsecs away assigned his planet a flesh debt measured in regimental units. The numbers are compiled in vaulted data looms older than his species' understanding of decimals. A tithe request pings through 1,000,000 channels, lands on a sub-governor's desk, and people begin to vanish. It doesn't matter where. An underhive, a nomad shanty, a wasteland mine. Entire populations can be reaped without any paperwork ever leaving orbit. And for those with the misfortune of living in territories fully integrated into the Administratum census layers, it's even worse. The quotas are enforced by the Schola Progenium, drafted through conscription rituals wrapped in layers of dogma, overseen by priests who smile only once, when the transport doors are sealed. Recruitment is not an opportunity. It is an abduction justified by doctrine. A family may offer up a son to fulfill a debt. A planetary governor may raffle off citizenship exemptions for every 100 able bodies submitted. In penal colonies, even the most pitiful crime can be punished with transfer into a penal legion, with no expectation of survival, only the promise that death might come with a medal sewn into the corpse's flak vest. The only criterion is that the lungs function, usually. On feudal worlds, they come cloaked in gold, chanting emperor's praise, presenting the guard as divine inheritance. On hive worlds, they come in convoys, riot suppression teams herding the chosen to loading ramps. On forge worlds, the indenture contracts are signed with blood or oil, whichever is more convenient. There are no age restrictions. If you can walk, you can march. If you can march, you can bleed. The youngest known guardsmen are indistinguishable from children, their growth accelerated by rations designed not to nourish, but to simulate adulthood long enough for the body to die at regulation height. Veterans joke about it. A lasgun weighs more than a fresh recruit. The recoil breaks collarbones. You learn to shoot between fractures. No training precedes the draft. That comes later, if at all. The first order issued to a new inductee is not to learn, but to forget. Forget language. Forget custom. Forget what your father taught you about stars. Forget that your mother ever whispered your name. The Administratum does not record who you were. The Astra Militarum does not care. Because names don't shoot. Names don't advance. Names hesitate. And hesitation is treason. Some tithed are never even told why they were selected. For some, it is determined centuries before they're born, encoded into a familial obligation inked into planetary contract vaults. For others, it is random, dictated by failed crop yields or the unfortunate timing of a visiting Munitorum overseer in need of bodies to pad his return quota. A world may be bled to silence in the name of balance sheets. Rebellion is anticipated, expected, recorded. It is factored into the supply chain. The entire concept of worth has been eradicated. A guardsman's value is calculated not by what he is, but by how many seconds he can delay an enemy advance before death. In many campaigns, that is literally the metric. Expected lifespan is measured in moments, 15 hours, 6 hours, less. A successful regiment may lose 80% of its men and still be labelled an optimal expenditure, because they did not run, because they died as commanded. Across the segmentum, trillions vanish into those black-ribbed transports, each carrying the scent of rust and manufactured prayer. Each one lands in silence. Each one closes its doors without farewells. And from that moment on, their lives no longer belong to them. They are the emperors. They are the Munitorums. They are yours only at the moment of death, if you're lucky enough to see it coming. The cogitator didn't stutter. It spat out his designation with flawless speed. 17 alphanumerics, 2 sector identifiers, 1 expiration marker. He was no longer a citizen, no longer a name, no longer a person. He was a resource file, filed, tagged, and ready to be spent. The moment you enter the Munitorum's care, your identity dissolves. It is not stripped. It is deconstructed, logged, purged, and replaced with something that cannot disobey. You do not speak unless addressed. You do not move unless ordered. You do not exist unless scheduled. Your entire being is overwritten, line by line, cell by cell, until only 2 facts remain: your number and your debt. You are not taught history. You are not taught tactics. You are taught loyalty. You are taught silence. You are taught that to flinch is to betray. The Scholar Progenium instructors call it indoctrinal scaffolding. They carve lessons into your back with shock rod and sleep denial. They speak in liturgy so often the sound of civilian speech begins to hurt. By the end of week 2, most stop dreaming. By week 3, they stop remembering what they used to dream about. This is not education, it is deletion. The initial drills are not combat-based. They are behavior correction systems disguised as devotional rituals. You are told the Emperor loves you, and then ordered to crawl face down through razor wire until you understand what that love costs. You are told the Emperor watches over you, and then dropped in darkness for days without light or sound to contemplate what that surveillance feels like. You are told the Emperor forgives nothing and punished for sins you do not remember committing. Instructors wear masks. Some feature Aquila visors, some stylized skulls. You will never know their names. You will never hear one raise their voice. Their punishments arrive in silence. Their commands are delivered via Voxburst or Auspex tablet. Discipline is measured in efficiency, not cruelty. The cruelty is incidental. The pain is data. Every aspect of your former life becomes ammunition for your instructors. If you were religious, they will blaspheme to shatter you. If you were rebellious, they will break your joints until submission is easier than standing. If you were quiet, they will isolate you until silence becomes unbearable. Each cadet is reshaped according to failure response modeling. The Imperium does not forge men. It refines obedience. Uniforms are standardized by region, but customized by campaign need. Most are ill-fitting by design. A discomforted soldier is an alert soldier. Rank is tattooed on the inside of the forearm, just beneath the pulse point, hidden under standard issue flak and only visible under medscan or field strip. Names are not included, because they aren't needed. During prayer drills, you kneel for hours, palms up, laser gun raised in offering. To drop the weapon is sin. To look away from the shrine is failure. The shrine is not always present. Sometimes it is a pick slate. Sometimes it is an instructor in an Aquila mask. Sometimes it is nothing, and you are beaten for pretending you saw something at all. Nutrition is monitored. Hydration is timed. Excretion is regulated. No bodily function escapes codification. Sleep is conditional. Recaf is medicinal, administered only when performance lags. Emotion is discouraged. Joy is penalized. Laughter is forbidden unless initiated by an officer. On certain worlds, indoctrination is augmented by cortical probes or hypno-retention software. These are implanted without consent. The subject may not even realize they've been altered until a battle trigger activates a preloaded behavior matrix. Panic is converted into ritual action. Fear becomes reflexive praise. You are not permitted to remember who you were, but you will never forget what you become, because you will be reminded every hour, every inspection, every march, every time your name is replaced by your number on a kill list, a casualty form, a supply log, or a Vox channel. The number will outlive you. It will appear on the requisition for your body bag, on the slab where they stack your flak armor for reissue, on the official death ledger where space has been left blank under notable action. Some recruits carve their number into their laser gun. Some ink it into their skin. Some never speak it again. All die with it on record. No matter how many die, no matter where, no matter why, the number is preserved. You are not a man. You are not a woman. You are a resource. You are a protocol. You are a unit in a ledger the Emperor has not read in 10,000 years, and your number does not get a funeral. The first time they handed him a lasgun, it was already stained with dried blood. Not his, not anyone he'd ever meet. The blood was ceremonial, left there on purpose, unsanitized, crusted into the grip like a fingerprint from a previous death. He was told not to clean it. The stain was his welcome. A lasgun is not a weapon, it is a contract. Once accepted, it marks the bearer as accountable, not just for enemy blood, but for their own. The Militarum issues flak armor that ruptures under high-caliber impact. They issue ration bars that decay teeth and freeze bowels. They issue lasguns that burn out after 7 consecutive shots without recalibration. But they do not issue forgiveness. You fail, you fall. And if you fall without permission, your own comrades are expected to carry out sentence. Training begins with the manual, the infantryman's uplifting primer, a sacred object enforced with fear. It contradicts itself, lies openly, and glorifies martyrdom with mathematical precision. It tells you an orc is unintelligent and easily dispatched with a single lasbolt to the eye. It tells you tyrannids fear flame. It tells you chaos is afraid of conviction. You are expected to memorize these fictions and recite them aloud during weapon drills. Truth is not useful. Belief is. The barracks are windowless. The bunks are stacked 5 high. Sleep rotation is erratic, broken by sirens and punishment rituals. Guardsmen are drilled until their limbs seize and their teeth crack. If you faint, your place is marked with your serial. Another body fills the slot. The instructors don't pause. A dropped rifle is a sin. A missed formation is grounds for flogging. One night of unsanctioned sobbing earns latrine detail for a month. Firearms training does not teach you to shoot. It teaches you to obey. Each volley is choreographed. Fire on command, reload on signal, advance by squad line, retreat only when the whistle cuts through the smoke. Improvisation is heresy. Heroism is accidental. Anything that isn't explicitly ordered is considered suspicious. Bayonet practice is compulsory. You do not stab to kill. You stab to confirm. To confirm that your enemy is flesh. To confirm that you are capable. To confirm that the screams mean nothing. The first kill is not celebrated, it is expected. If your expression changes when it happens, too proud, too pale, you are noted. Psychological audits follow. And if the Adeptus Ministorum detects deviation, you are reassigned to a penitence company. Drill instructors are selected for cruelty. Their role is not to inspire, it is to harden. They walk with shock batons always visible, never holstered. Their boots strike metal like judgments. They are permitted to execute recruits if the failure is deemed catastrophic. That authority is not symbolic. In every regiment, someone makes an example of themselves. In every regiment, someone is buried before graduation, usually in pieces. By the end of the first month, bone fractures are catalogued as part of the medical intake. Blood loss is normalized. Vomiting is expected. Infection is inevitable. You are taught to treat your wounds by scavenging unused bandages from the corpses of the day's failures. Medici support is conditional on your ability to recite the full benediction of cleansing before passing out. Live fire exercises begin before recruits are ready. That is the point. Battlefields are not fair. Friendly fire is expected. Last rounds cross in unpredictable arcs. Comrades die mid-shout. The purpose of training is not to prevent that. The purpose is to ensure the squad line doesn't blink. Sometimes, mid-drill, a commissar will walk into the formation and ask a question. Random, unrelated, designed to expose thought. If you answer incorrectly, you are stunned. If you answer politically, you are beaten. If you hesitate, you are executed. It is never announced as a test. The survivors learn not to ask. By the end of training, you don't walk like a civilian. You don't speak like a citizen. You move as if measured. You think in intervals. You pray in Vox code. They don't graduate you. They load you onto a ship, still in uniform, still holding your lasgun, still bleeding from a drill that never officially ended. The moment you leave the facility, you are considered operational. You are now a guardsman. You are now steel in the blood. You are now muzzle in the eye. And the Imperium does not blink. They gave him a laser gun with serial numbers scratched off, its barrel slightly warped from a plasma flare during a campaign no one would name. The sling was frayed, the sight lens was cracked, the charge pack was half spent. He asked for another. They beat him unconscious and filed the complaint as insubordination during ration harmony. Every guardsman is issued gear drawn from a planetary depot overseen by the Departamento Munitorum, whose logistics are dictated not by need, but by quotas designed decades in advance and never updated for field conditions. Requests are not evaluated, they are interpreted, misread, or discarded. To ask for more is to imply deficiency. To imply deficiency is to admit doubt in the Imperium's sufficiency. And doubt is sedition. Your laser gun has a 1 in 4 chance of working properly. That's not pessimism, that's doctrine. The Munitorum calculates acceptable field losses based on equipment decay, atmospheric interference, and soldier entropy. If you die because your weapon overheats, the system has not failed. It has fulfilled its function. It filtered you out. You are taught to love your laser gun, not trust it. Trust is heresy. But love is mandatory. You chant prayers to it before each drop. You clean it with cloths soaked in sacred unguents. You sleep with it within arm's reach. You carve verses into the stock. The Mechanicus instructs you never to name it. The priesthood commands the opposite. You are expected to obey both. If your last pack is empty, you are punished. If your last pack is full, you are punished. The only correct state is ready, but untested. Charged, but frugal. Expended only when commanded, and never beyond standard discharge intervals. Overuse of munitions is a criminal offence. Underuse is cowardice. Both carry penalty. Your flak armour is a riddle of contradiction, issued in batches of pre-used sets, often stitched with the names of fallen men. Its plates buckle under concentrated fire and melt in proximity to plasma. It is not meant to save you. It is meant to delay your death long enough for a senior officer to retreat. If your chest plate stops a shot, it is either divine intervention or administrative error. Either way, it will not happen again. Helmets are rare, Vox units rarer, Auspex devices are assigned only to officers, and even then, only if the Munitorum has surplus following a campaign's conclusion. Most guardsmen rely on field whispers, blind coordination, and the instinctive rhythm of shared trauma. You don't signal, you sync. Ammo is not requested. It is received by lot, in crated form, often mislabeled. You may be issued autogun rounds for a squad of Lazrafals. You may be given power cells that buzz with dormant radiation. You may receive boxes of empty clips, bundled as blessings. If you question it, you are removed. If you fire anyway, you are expected to kill. The chain of requisition is holy. You do not skip it. You do not accelerate it. You do not tamper. If you need boots, you file Form 7 AG77, submit it to Quartermaster Lexicon Processing, and pray the file survives the cogitator translation process. Most do not. If you are barefoot in winter, it is not because the system failed. It is because the system succeeded in testing your faith. Malfunction protocols are brutal. If your weapon fails in combat, you are ordered to continue firing. If your armor collapses, you are ordered to hold position. If your Vox goes dead, you are ordered to repeat the last order heard. If your squad dies and you are alone, you are not considered lost. You are considered forward reconnaissance. You are not supposed to survive with your gear intact. If you do, your equipment is reclaimed, refurbished, and issued to someone else. You are not thanked. You are not recorded. You are not remembered. The gear matters. You don't. Some guardsmen paint their flak with icons of death or prayers of vengeance. Others scavenge spare parts from corpses. Many steal from their own, not out of greed, but because the supply lines will not bend, and because the only thing more terrifying than facing the enemy with broken gear is waiting for the Munitorum to send replacements. Do not question the ammo count. Do not question the issue tags. Do not question the dates on the rations. If you open a crate and the food inside is older than you, eat it. If you are told the melter gun is safe to carry, shoulder it, no matter how often the fuel cell weeps. If the bayonet doesn't lock, hold it with faith, because faith is armor. And if your weapon fails, if your kit collapses, if your body falters, know this: The complaint has already been filed, in advance, logged in triplicate. You are the expendable clause. When they first marched together, they couldn't understand one another. Some spoke low Gothic in clipped syllables, others in sing-song litanies shaped by dust winds and tribal echo. One guardsman chanted pre-battle rites in rhythmic staccato, inherited from forge priests 5 generations back. Another replied in broken sign, hands twitching from a life beneath phototoxic suns. A third, silent, still wore the jawbone of her father as a badge of inheritance. None of it mattered. Because the moment they stepped into formation, their cultures ceased to exist. The Astra Militarum does not recognize heritage, it erases it. A regiment is built not from common bloodlines or homeworlds, but from quotas, supply availability, and logistical convenience. You might be flanked by a noble's son from a high-spire spire planet and a reconditioned penal conscript from a penal asteroid 2 sectors over. Both wear the same flak. Both carry the same rifle. Both are expected to die the same. It is called regimental blending, but it is not unification, it is dissolution. You are assigned to a regiment not based on compatibility, but based on vacancy. If your serial code ends in a specific tri-digit pattern, you are shuffled toward units that suffered catastrophic losses in the last campaign. This may mean being dropped into a squad where no one shares your dialect, where the battle prayers feel like blasphemy, where the regimental colours insult your ancestral banners. You are told to adapt. You are punished if you do not. The Departamento Munitorum does not account for linguistic drift. Orders are shouted in standard High Gothic regardless of comprehension. Miscommunication in combat is common. Casualties due to command confusion are classified as convergence fatalities and attributed to enemy action. They are never logged as preventable, because culture is not considered an asset. It is considered noise. Those who cling to their heritage are isolated. Veterans refer to them as flag holders, soldiers still trying to carry the burden of a dead world. Most break after a few weeks. Others are broken deliberately. Squadmates encouraged to mock their accents, sabotage their gear, invalidate their memories. Some are reassigned to suicide charges without explanation. Some are made examples during commissariat drills. Their deaths are logged with no context, no concern, and no afterword. Uniforms are standardized, but their imperfections remain. You may wear boots stitched with fibers from a desert hive, a flak jacket stenciled with Ice World camo, and a helmet that once bore the aquila of a jungle regiment annihilated decades ago. Your body becomes a patchwork of dead regiments, each one a failed legacy. You do not honor them. You carry them because the supply lines will not waste. Ceremonies vary. Some regiments recite the litany of impact before firing. Others remain silent until the first shell lands. Some bury their dead upright. Some burn them whole. But once the Munitorum arrives, all rites are ended. All traditions are overwritten. You salute on their timing. You pray to their script. You mourn in silence or not at all. To speak of your home is a liability. To remember its name is to risk forgetting your orders. Most don't even try. They refer to it only as before the camps, before the drills, before the voice in their helmet told them which direction to die in. Some still whisper it before they sleep, into their rations, into the cracks of the trench wall. A last defiance, offered like a seed buried in ash. But it never grows. Because the Munitorum does not water names. It grinds them. You do not come from a place. You come from a number. Your world is the code on your chest plate. Your family is the squad that hasn't died yet. Your anthem is the scream of mortars, and your flag is the burn-scorched steel of the laser gun pressed to your cheek. Your planet doesn't matter here. It never did. The dropship shook like it was falling apart. It was. No one screamed. Not because they were brave, but because the air was too thin and the stomachs too empty. Every soldier was strapped in with belts that had held 20 other bodies. Some still bore flecks of blood. One belt locked tight with a whine like a dying servo. Another refused to latch, so the trooper it belonged to held onto the side rail and whispered apologies to the Emperor, not for dying, but for dying poorly. A guardsman never chooses the battlefield. They are transported in sealed holds deep in the belly of vessels too massive to name. No viewport, no orientation, no knowledge of destination, only heat, only tremors, only the scent of oil, stale air, and what fear smells like when it's been trapped for a month. You are never told where you're going, only what you're bringing. The Administratum issues deployment kits tailored not to the enemy, but to the inventory. If the Forge world had spare meltaguns, you fight in tunnels. If they had camo fatigues in jungle colours, you fight in ash. If your transport is overloaded, half your gear is stored in orbital drop crates that scatter mid-descent and land in the hands of scavengers, xenos, or molten lava. The Emperor protects. The Munitorum guesses. When you land, you do not disembark. You are expelled. Most deployment hatches open with a klaxon and a chemical purge. You fall, not walk, slammed into mud, rock, snow, or smoke. If you're lucky, you hit dirt before the enemy sees you. If you're not, your corpse makes a convenient landmark for the next wave. There is no acclimation, no reconnaissance, no fallback position. You land where you're told, you hold where you land, and you die if holding fails. Tactical adjustment is a privilege reserved for officers or posthumous debriefs. Drop worlds vary. Some are frozen hells where laser guns fail to charge and the cold strips flesh from your fingers. Others are volcanic plains where armor fuses to skin and melters detonate when breathed on wrong. Others are warp-tainted husks where gravity shifts without warning. Voices come from the soil and you bleed from your eyes if you sleep too long. It doesn't matter. The mission remains. Hold. No rescue is coming. If you are encircled, you dig in. If you are outgunned, you charge. If you are injured, you bind yourself and keep moving. Extraction is never guaranteed. Even victory does not promise recovery. Transports are reserved for officers, psychers, and commissars. Guardsmen remain behind, to fortify, to police, or to be erased in the next wave of conflict. Abandonment is baked into doctrine. You are not a resource worth recovering. Your duty is to expend. If you make it through the campaign, congratulations. You are now part of the garrison force. You will defend the ashes you helped create, repelling whatever remnants arrive next, without support, and with gear that corroded mid-battle. The Administratum will declare the planet pacified. The Scholar will recruit from whatever children survived. The Munitorum will record the casualty rates, and the Ecclesiarchy will build shrines from your bones, if anyone remembers where you fell. Some soldiers dig their own graves before battle, not from defeatism, from tradition. Others mark their coordinates on scraps of flakboard, in the hope someone someday finds the note and lies about how they died well. Because you do not die at the end of a campaign. You die wherever the system needs you to. On landing zones that become altars. On trenches that collapse into rivers. On mountain ridges where no name will ever be carved. It is not about heroism, it is about proximity. You die where you're dropped, and the Imperium counts that as victory. The order came as a hiss, half-coded, half-devoured by feedback. He caught only fragments. Advance, coordinate, no retreat. The Vox unit crackled, sputtered, then went dead. Around him, the others didn't even look up. They hadn't heard it. Or they had, and knew better than to move on static. A guardsman fights by command, not instinct, not initiative. The structure is rigid. Orders flow downward from ranking officers to unit sergeants to Vox operators to the trench floor. But Vox units are unreliable. They're scavenged, repaired with scrap, blessed in binary by tech adepts who don't understand the wiring but believe in it nonetheless. When they fail, and they always do, orders become myths, and myths get soldiers killed. Every platoon carries a Vox. 1. If it's destroyed, the unit becomes severed. Cut adrift from the wider formation, they continue fighting with whatever their last order was. Days can pass. Whole squads operate under dead commands, holding positions long since abandoned, engaging enemies no longer present, waiting for air support that was never dispatched. They call it ghost marching. Some still salute when the Vox sparks, even if it's just rain hitting metal. Command does not confirm. Orders are issued once. If misunderstood, that's weakness. If misinterpreted, that's error. If lost entirely, that's natural culling. The Imperium has no room for repetition. Redundancy is for the weak. A guardsman who needs to hear an order twice is already considered a liability. Maps are rare. Operational charts, rarer still. Most plans are described verbally, over broken vox, sketched in the mud, or memorized during pre-battle prayer. If the terrain changes, if the front collapses, if the city burns, if the drop zone shifts, nothing is updated. You fight with outdated intelligence, because updated intelligence is a luxury, and luxuries are for the Astartes. Tactics devolve quickly. What began as a three-pronged advance becomes a disjointed crawl. Squads separated by craters rely on flares and line-of-sight gestures. Shouting gets you shot. Running gets you isolated. Decision-making is compressed into seconds of survival calculation. Do we move forward? Is that enemy? Do we fire? Do we pray? Chain of command fractures easily. Lieutenants die. Sergeants disappear. Commissars fall. Leadership falls to whoever's still breathing and willing to shout. But stepping up is dangerous. The moment you give orders, you become a target. For the enemy, for friendly fire, for the commissariat. Unauthorized command assumption is punishable by death, unless successful. Then it's called initiative. Sometimes reinforcements arrive. Sometimes artillery support is triggered. But the signals come through garbled, delayed, or in code sequences written for a different war. You call for evac and get an orbital strike. You beg for coordinates and receive a prayer. You report position and hear your own voice looped back, screaming. In cities, vox is drowned by concrete density and electromagnetic waste. In jungles, it fades in the humidity. On warp-tainted ground, it speaks in voices that aren't your own. There are stories, always stories, of entire regiments lost because of a corrupted signal. A retreat order issued in the enemy's tongue. A ceasefire meant for a different sector. A forward assault triggered by the screams of a dead officer played backward. No one confirms. No one questions. They obey and die. And the administrator marks it down as miscommunication. Acceptable variance. No one mourns. No one fixes it. Because from orbit, the battle still moves. Arrows still shift on the command slate. Units still advance. Vox static doesn't show up on casualty charts. But it's there. Everywhere. In the trenches. In the ruins. In the lungs of the wounded trying to scream through the snow. In the ears of a soldier begging for orders that will never come. Final orders are rarely clear. Often they are silence. And silence is doctrine. The morning begins when the shells fall. Not at dawn, there is no dawn here, but when the bombardment schedule resets. It comes like clockwork, though there are no clocks. Just impact, just rhythm. Just the tremor of distant guns reminding you that another 24 hours of sanctioned misery has begun. There is no reveille, no bugle, no roster call. The trenches don't permit ceremony. You wake when the concussions reach your ribs, when the dust shakes loose from the overhead braces and lands in your teeth. You wake to silence, broken by a scream 2 rows down or a boot against your flank. You wake with your mouth dry from chem exposure and your fingers fused to the laser gun you clutched while sleeping. Breakfast is issued by schedule, but rarely arrives. When it does, it's a packet of ration paste stamped with an expiration date older than your regiment. Some come frozen. Some arrive already leaking. Some are alive. You eat all of it. Refusal is treason. Vomiting is weakness. Complaints are suicide. The paste tastes like nothing and everything. Rust, old fat, melted plastic, dried meat from species you hope were xenos. Recaf is a sacred indulgence. Only issued on rotation, sometimes not at all. When it comes, it's served scalding in canteens used to store hydraulic fluid. It burns the tongue and sharpens the nerves. Some mix it with powdered stim, or the chalky residue scraped from ration bricks. Others hoard it, trading sips for low sticks or painkillers. Most down it fast, praying the heat keeps the shakes at bay. Low sticks are currency. Not in thrones, those don't matter here, but in burns, trade, and silence. One low buys you 20 seconds of peace. 2 earns a lookout's blind eye. A whole pack buys loyalty in blood. You never ask where they come from. Smugglers, Munitorum bribes, officer pity. It doesn't matter. They move through the trenches like breath through lungs, and just as poisonous. Every day has rites. Not religious ones, those are reserved for the priests, but personal, desperate rituals carved out of repetition. One soldier scratches a line into the trench wall for every hour survived. Another carves saints into the stock of her laser gun, stopping only when space runs out. A third whispers the name of every friend already buried beneath the mud. These are not habits. They are anchors. If they're disrupted, men break. The ecclesiarchy sends preachers, not daily, not often. When they come, they recite verses from soaked scriptures, their voices hoarse from chemical air and too much shouting. They bless the bullets. They scream over the dead. They lash doubt with chains of scripture and tell you the emperor watches, even in the rain. No one believes them, not fully, but belief is not required, only performance. You nod, you repeat, you kneel. You raise your hand when asked who among you will be next to charge. Everyone raises their hand, even the ones who can't. Trench routines are brutal because brutality is the only constant. Digging rotations rotate endlessly. You dig through frozen stone, you dig through your own waste, you dig through corpses you didn't bury. The smell is unending. The dead are layered. Some a day old, some weeks, some no longer identifiable as human. You sleep beside them. You lean against them when your legs give out. You drink from the same rainwater that seeps into their sockets. Shelling comes in phases. Regular, chaotic, both. Sometimes it's an enemy barrage. Sometimes it's friendly artillery landing 5 sectors off target. Sometimes it's just the planet cracking open. The hour of shells isn't on any schedule, but when it begins, everything stops. You lie down. You dig deeper. You clench your jaw and recite the litany of endurance, even if you forgot half the words. The shells do not discriminate. They kill the brave. They kill the coward. They kill the one you were just speaking to. And when they land, they erase sound. The blast hits, and suddenly the world is all white noise and pressure. You look up, ears bleeding, and see the same sky you saw yesterday. Because the sky never changes. Not in the trenches. It's always grey, always broken, always far too close. Meals come irregularly, sanity more so, conversation dies within days, humour survives only in muttered mockery, jokes about commissars, about flak armour, about dying tomorrow. No one laughs. They just smile, thin, sharp, haunted, and light another low with shaking fingers. There are no days in the trenches, only shell intervals, only the next ration, only the next command, only the silence that comes when everyone you know is gone and the trench still expects you to move. It starts when you forget what day it is, then you forget what sector, then you forget which voice on the Vox belongs to command and which ones belong to the dead. The first time you see something that isn't there, you don't tell anyone, not because you're afraid they won't believe you, but because you're afraid they will, that they've seen it too, that it's real, that it's coming back. Warp exposure isn't always dramatic. There's no warning siren, no flash of eldritch light, no tear in the sky. Sometimes it's just a wrongness in the air, like static you can taste, like shadows that don't match the objects casting them. You blink and the trench is a little longer than it was. The man beside you is wearing his helmet backward. A name you haven't spoken in weeks leaks out of your mouth in a language you never learned. You were told the warp is far away, that it takes rituals, sorcery, sin to summon its attention, that only psychers and heretics are touched. That's a lie. The warp touches everything. It is everywhere. And on the front, where the veil is thinnest, where fear is strongest, it leaks through cracks like smoke through a coffin's lid. It gets into your head. You forget how long you've been awake. Your hands shake, even when you're still. Your trigger finger cramps but won't unclench. You blink and see movement where there's none. You hear laughter in the lasfire, You start to speak in cadence, reciting liturgies you never learned. One guardsman digs a hole and calls it home, refusing to leave even when ordered. Another refuses to blink, convinced that if he does, the thing just behind the ridgeline will get closer. A third begins speaking to his lasgun, calling it by the name of someone buried 2 weeks ago. Commissars call it battle fatigue. Medici call it neurostatic compression. You call it normal. Because if you question it, you die. Or worse, you're noticed. Warp sickness doesn't get you pulled from the line. It gets you reassigned to suicide squads, to meat grinder charges, to scout detail without auspex. It's better to shut up, to nod, to fire when ordered, to keep walking, even when your boots fill with blood that isn't yours. The front line breaks reality in smaller ways too. You lose your depth perception. Not because your eyes fail, but because the terrain does. Buildings shift position between patrols. A crater disappears. A corpse you buried crawls out again and lies down somewhere else. You stop recognizing your squad mates. You stop recognizing yourself. Mirrors are banned for a reason. You look into one and see yourself from yesterday, or not at all. Some guardsmen scratch their cereal into their arm daily, just to make sure they're still the same man. Some stop checking. They no longer care. Sleep becomes dangerous, not because of snipers, not because of night attacks, but because your dreams are no longer your own. The warp speaks in dreams, in symbols, in promises, in memories you never lived but still regret. You wake up with your hands around your own throat. You wake up crying in languages the Imperium has outlawed. One day you realize you can't remember your mother's voice, or your father's face, or the shape of the sun on your homeworld. You remember numbers, serial codes, ballistic coefficients, the litany of restraint, the prayer to jam the enemy's optics, the phrase they taught you to scream before you die. You do not flinch when the shells fall anymore. You do not blink when a man dies beside you. You haven't blinked in days, because every time you close your eyes, something else is watching. They make you recite the benediction of dying every morning. Not because they think you'll die that day, but because they know you might. And they want it on record that your soul went upward. Upward is where they say he waits, but no one looks up anymore. The sky is artillery smoke and orbital flame. If the Emperor watches, he does it through the targeting lenses of dead officers. The faith isn't about comfort, it's about compliance. You are expected to believe, not personally, not deeply, just visibly. Belief is a performance, it's a survival instinct. You whisper the rite of bolter consecration before firing a lasgun that misfires on every third shot. You genuflect to shrines made of scrap and bones. You repeat the creed even when it contradicts itself. Doubt is heresy, but caution is survival, but zeal is holy, but hesitation is sin. You memorize all of it. You don't have a choice. Commissars don't look for heretics, they look for unbelievers, and unbelief has no symptoms, only silence. Speak too little, and they suspect. Speak too clearly, and they suspect. Smirk at the wrong time, and your squad digs a pit. You're told it's for waste. You're told it's for fortification. You're told nothing at all. Then you're shot beside it. Executions are public, always. One bolt to the temple, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. You see a man kneel, you hear the verse, you smell the blood, and you remember what happens when your voice cracks during the catechism of duty. They call them morale events. Commissars wear black. Not for intimidation, but because black hides the burn marks when they purge one of their own. They don't lead from the front. They walk the rear line, looking for hesitation. They memorize your blink patterns. They time your aim drills. They ask you the names of the Emperor's sons in the middle of a firefight and expect answers in correct order, with devotional tones. Fail once, and you're warned. Fail twice, and you're corrected. 3 times, and the bolt round delivers salvation. Some soldiers believe, truly. They pray during bombardments, kiss purity seals before charging, whisper his name as their entrails spill into the trench water. Others fake it. They mimic the rhythm, the cadence, the look in their eyes that says they still think someone's listening. The difference doesn't matter. Both die the same, but only one dies with the squad singing after. There is no room for atheism in the Guard. Not because it's banned, because it's irrelevant. You don't fight for a god you understand. You fight because the man next to you does. Because you have to scream something as you charge through flame. Because silence sounds too much like guilt. Some commissars are worse. They test you with loaded questions. If the Emperor commanded you to kill your sergeant, would you obey? If you hesitate, you fail. If you say yes, you're arrested. If you say no, you're labeled an insubordinate. The correct answer is to remain silent and trust that your heart was loud enough. On some days, faith is rationed like ammo. You get just enough to keep moving, just enough to justify it all, just enough to keep you from putting the laser gun under your chin and triggering full charge. Because if you kill yourself, your squad takes punishment. And if they suffer, they stop sharing their faith with you. Because belief is not private, it's communal. And when you fail it, you make everyone bleed. So you recite. You kneel. You chant verses that once made sense and now just mean wait longer. You burn incense even when it attracts shells. You wear the aquila even when it burns through your flak. You believe because if you don't, he hears that too. They say the Emperor hears every prayer. But he listens hardest when you're about to die. And if your last thought isn't loyal, you won't be remembered. It's scratched. The barrel's slightly warped. The charge indicator flickers between green and black like it can't decide if it wants to lie. The stock is wrapped in cloth from a dead man's sleeve, and the aquila on the casing has been carved over 3 times, first neat, then jagged, then furious. It fires, most of the time. But that laser gun isn't yours. It never was. Every weapon in the guard is recycled. They tell you it's sacred standardization. But really, it's scarcity, masked by ritual. Your laser gun has a serial number older than your planet's conquest. Its power cell's been recharged 200 times beyond regulation. The barrel has fired so many rounds, its calibration data no longer matches the original pattern. When you aim, you're adjusting to a memory that isn't yours. It belonged to someone else, and he's still in there. You see it in the scratches along the grip, nicks from nervous fingers or battle tremors. You feel it in the way the stock pulls to the left, like it remembers a man with a crooked shoulder. Some guardsmen whisper that laser guns remember who killed with them, that the machine spirit gets hungry for repetition, that if you don't score your own kills fast enough, it jams on purpose, makes you prove you're worthy. Rifles don't get buried with their users. They get stripped, wiped, relabeled, and passed down. You might hold the weapon of a hero or a coward. You'll never know. They don't tell you. But the wear patterns speak. If the mag release sticks, it saw desert. If the scope is fogged, it saw the jungle. If the casing rattles, it was dropped during orbital descent, and whoever held it didn't survive the landing. You inherit more than arms. Some guardsmen inherit knives with teeth marks, helmets with prayers scratched in forgotten tongues, flak vests with the name of someone else already scorched into the lining. You're not supposed to read them, but everyone does. Not out of curiosity, out of hope. That maybe the man before you made it through something worse. That maybe you're the one who finishes the job. Some weapons come with kill marks, not yours, but someone's. You're expected to add your own. Some do, some don't. Some erase the old ones, afraid they'll be blamed for what the last man did. Others leave them, so their laser gun looks more dangerous, more experienced, more afraid. The tech priests call the laser gun a miracle of the machine god, durable, reliable, eternal. But they do not fire it in the rain. They do not sleep with it under their spine. They do not clean it with cloth stolen from a chapel wall because standard wipes ran out 3 weeks ago. They do not die trying to charge it with heat drained from their own body. Every guardsman has a story about a laser gun that wouldn't fire, about one that discharged on its own, about one that sparked right before a commissar gave the order to advance, and everyone in the trench pretended not to hear it. The gun is not just a tool, it's a relic, a rumor, a burden. Some soldiers name theirs, not out of affection, but because if you scream its name loud enough when charging, it might listen. Some tape oaths to the barrel. Others tape hair, blood, bone, whatever fragments of meaning they can carry. Some write the names of their dead onto the power cell, So when it heats up, the memory glows. There are no new weapons, only old ones with new hands. And every time you pull the trigger, someone else's ghost steadies your aim. You never hold it alone. They take your name before you hold a rifle, before you speak your oath, before you even wear the uniform. It's not torn from you, it's processed, filed, reduced. You stand naked under the lumen strips, surrounded by 100 others, and they brand you with digits. First the regiment, then the company, then the platoon, then your slot. You are no longer Callan or Irina or Brask. You are 945-112-C84, or 78 Vox R7, or Echo 640. The designation is longer than your life will be. You don't resist. You tell yourself it's tradition. That names are luxuries for civilians, that the Emperor knows your number. But really, it's convenience. The system can't track individuals, only formations, only tallies. If you die, they reissue the number. Sometimes not even that. They just mark the gear for redistribution and stamp replaced in field. You try to hold on, to your voice, to your face. But the helmet strips that. The flak uniform bleeds colour. The routines crush rhythm. You stop speaking with tone. You answer in monosyllables. You forget your birthday. You forget the smell of your sister's skin. You forget you ever existed before the trench. They don't call it erasure, they call it standardization. The commissariat says it prevents corruption. That heresy spreads through personal bonds. That memory weakens discipline. That names breed favoritism, rivalry, doubt. A number can't betray you. A number doesn't cry when its friend is vaporized. A number doesn't ask why. If someone tries to use their real name, it's considered arrogance, non-compliance, the mark of someone unwilling to serve the whole. If they push, they're corrected. If they persist, they're removed. You're taught to speak in designators. You refer to the dead by position, not name. Our Vox went silent. Our spotter fell. Our advance burned. Even letters vanish. Letters are banned unless inspected. Too risky, too individual. They might carry forbidden words, forbidden memories, forbidden love. You might see someone you knew before, a brother, a friend, a lover, and not even recognize them beneath the grime, the standard issue, the designation on their arm. You call them by number, they call you the same, and you both pretend not to remember. In some regiments, it goes further. They remove distinguishing marks. Scars are burned clean. Tattoos are lasered off. Even hair is regulated down to the follicle. In winter zones, everyone wears full masks. In radiation zones, the helmets stay sealed. You could share a foxhole for months and never see another soldier's face. Some still resist, quietly. They scratch names into walls. They whisper old songs. They give pet names to their canteens, their laser guns, the rats that share their bedroll. But they do it in the dark, in silence, under breath. Because if you're caught, the penalty isn't just death. It's re-education. They don't kill you. They process you again. New serial, new uniform, new unit. You forget yourself a second time. By then, it sticks. So you stop asking who you are. You stop remembering who you were. You speak your designation like a prayer. You let it bury the name that made you cry. The name you screamed when the drop hatch opened. The name someone might have written on your chest if your body was ever recovered. But it won't be. You'll be marked unretrieved, or unrecorded, or not at all. Because in the Guard, no one dies with a name, only a number, and sometimes not even that. Someone shouted they saw a flare, bright, orange-white, arced over the dead zone. You looked. Everyone looked. It meant evacuation, or reinforcements, or at least air support. For a second, the trench was still, except for eyes chasing that glow like moths that had forgotten fire burns. The flare hissed out mid-air. No second came, no signal followed, no orders confirmed. You stood there, waiting, so did everyone else. Until someone muttered, "It was probably a misfire," and the moment folded inward. Hope shriveled. You went back to your post. No one spoke again. But that silence wasn't forgetfulness. It was mourning. For a feeling none of you should have had. In the Guard, hope is a liability. You're taught early that expectations kill, that the promise of survival weakens discipline, that if you believe in rescue, you'll hesitate to fire. You'll wait for relief that isn't coming. You'll hold position when you should be retreating, or retreat when you were meant to die holding ground. The Departamento Munitorum doesn't use words like extraction. They use withdrawal pending confirmation. They use post-action recovery logistics, which means, if you're not already dead, stay where you are until we decide if you matter. Sometimes shuttles come, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they hover low enough for you to see the pilot before redirecting to a different beacon. The flares were wrong, the codes were old, the priority was elsewhere. You were never part of the plan. Your trench isn't on the maps anymore. They built it, forgot it, and now you rot in it. The light at the end of the trench isn't a signal. It's chemical ignition. It's a flare left behind by someone who died with their finger still pressing the launch. Or a plasma burst from a ruptured coolant line. Or the reflection of your own helmet catching a muzzle flash. Whatever it is, it's not salvation. But you run toward it anyway. Because humans aren't built to live without narrative. You tell yourself there's a ship waiting. A bastion unbreached. A commander who remembers your name. Even if they only know your number. You dream of hearing your sector code crackle through the Vox, clean and urgent, followed by coordinates that aren't just suicide in code. The others do it too. They plan. They count days since the last evacuation. They trade stories of entire companies that made it out. None of them ever met those companies, but someone always knows someone who knew a survivor. That's enough. That's all it takes to keep moving when your bones grind inside your armor like old stone. Sometimes the flare is real. Sometimes it is the signal you thought. Sometimes the dropship lands. Sometimes. But by then, the trench is empty. Or burning. Or the flare misled another squad, and now they're overrun because they thought you were the ones firing it. No one gets punished for misfired hope. Because no one survives to be punished, so when it happens again, you don't tell the others. You see the light. You taste the static on your tongue. And you stay silent. You don't look. You don't run. You don't speak. You know better now. Because the light at the end of the trench isn't rescue. It's proof you're still alive. And that's a mistake the war is already trying to correct. Your body won't make it back. The Administratum knows this. So does your regiment. So does your commissar. When you fall, they don't send word to a recovery team. They don't log coordinates. They don't file a request. They stamp a report with a red seal that says, presumed lost in action. Then they move on to the next column. But your world will still get a letter. It arrives weeks or years later, carried by an aging courier servitor whose optics spark from sand exposure. The envelope is thick, sanctified, blood-edged. It includes a grainy pict of you, outdated, probably taken before you were assigned your first weapon. There's a citation written in High Gothic, medals you never earned, a battle you weren't even near. It says you died facing the enemy. It says your final act saved your comrades. It says your name will be honored for 10,000 years. It does not mention how long you screamed. It does not mention you were mistaken for another guardsman. It does not mention that your identification tag melted into your chest before they could confirm. Sometimes it lists the wrong name. That doesn't matter, because the narrative must be preserved. The Imperium doesn't grieve its dead. It mythologizes them. Every guardsman is a hero. Every death is sacrifice. Every torn torso in the mud is a monument to discipline. They don't mourn individuals. They add them to tallies. They recite them as numbers in sermons. 3,000 souls, valorous in loss. 12,000 lives, given freely. 100,000 names, immortal in death. No one remembers them, but everyone quotes them. The Schola Progenium plays recordings of posthumous commendations to its orphans, not to honor the fallen, to motivate replacements. Recruiters read your death reports to fresh-tithed worlds. They amplify the lies, that you faced a demon and laughed, that you led a countercharge single-handedly, that your last words were for the Emperor. They weren't. Your last words were probably your mother's name, or a call for help, or a half-choked scream as your lungs filled with chemical mist, or nothing at all, just the whine of a lass bolt through your throat and the sound of your bones breaking as you hit the trench floor. But those don't make good morale broadcasts. So instead they write you into a data slate as a symbol. They loop a Vox recording of a soldier shouting, "Glory and sacrifice," and attribute it to you. They build a shrine on your homeworld with a name etched in gold, yours or someone else's. It's irrelevant. The shrine's purpose isn't truth, it's recruitment. They tell your siblings you died proud. They tell your lovers you died clean. They tell your children you never screamed. And they keep telling those lies until the next tithe comes due, until the next wave of warm bodies arrives, until the trenches are filled again. And when the new recruits ask who fought here before, the officers will point to your name on a plaque. They'll tell your story. They'll say your ghost watches over them. And then they'll send those recruits to die beside what's left of you. The mud does not care who you were. The trench has no memory. The wall where you etched your initials is already gone, shattered by shellfire, soaked through, buried beneath collapsed plasteel and the bones of 100 others. You die face down in filth, and when they find you, if they find you, there's nothing left to identify. No tags, no teeth, no features, just char, ash, and the twisted suggestion of a uniform. Your squad moves on. They do not say your name. They do not mark the place. They can't, because if they did, they'd never leave it. You were one guardsman among billions. A statistical footnote in a campaign no one will finish reading. Your unit was erased by orbital bombardment. Your company reassigned before the crater cooled. The next regiment arrives with no idea you ever held that ground. They die in the same place. They vanish the same way. And the rotation continues. The Munitorum cannot track you. You are not missing. You are not listed. You are overwritten. The cogitators record a body count, a drop in rations consumed, a decrease in lashage output. That's all. Your face never made it into the records. The picked capture unit failed months ago. Your Medici file was lost in a fire. Your bunk was reassigned before your bones cooled. The voice you used in the trench was never recorded. And now it never existed. There are monuments, planetary obelisks, holographic rolls of honor, but they only hold names submitted by surviving officers. No one submitted yours. There were no survivors. No one remembered your designation. You never had time to etch it into your flak. You never had time to scream it as you burned. No saints will speak for you. No prayers will carry you. No statues will wear your face. You will not be remembered. Not because you failed, but because you succeeded in exactly the way the Imperium needed you to. Quietly, invisibly, completely. You filled the trench. You held the line. You died in sequence. You never broke. And that is all that was asked of you. That is all that will be taken from you. You are gone. And something else already wears your number.